I got that human alpaca. You know what I'm saying? I'm that 5'11" shag carpet bag daddy. You know what I'm saying? I got that. You know what I'm saying? You see me combing, you see me parting. They trying to catch me hair and naughty. You know how I'm doing with that hair. And the thing how I do my hair these days is, they out of Aquanet. When I was young, we used to use that Aquanet, boy. Burn it down. Burn it down. That's what you could do with that Aquanet. And they had that, man. You can't even get a can of Aquanet anymore. Nowadays, if you want to get a can of Aquanet, you need to go behind like a Staples or something and see a couple of little bad boys back there being naughty. Maybe 3 or 4 men back there playing, playing cream horn or something wild like that. Playing snickerdoodle with each other's bodies. Playing, looking for lemon meringues in the back of each other's throats. And those are the kind of people that might have a can of that Aquanet. And Aquanet was, man, I mean, dude, it was the original taxidermy product. Nowadays, they got a lot of taxidermists out there. I got a buddy out there, Mr. Duncan, who's a taxidermist. He's out there derming out on them squirrels and all of that. You know what I'm saying? And anytime you're using a paintbrush on a raccoon's asshole, you know that ain't work. I don't consider that work. If we're really talking about taxidermy, you out there, you know what I'm saying? Anytime you putting the finishing touches on a baby walrus dick, I don't consider that ain't art. You know what I'm saying? You out there verting, boy. You out there perverting. Mother Nature ain't hiring you to put the finishing touches on her products. You out there playing with, let's be honest, if you're doing dermy, if you out there in them derm streets, boy, them derm calles, then you are, that's the dark arts. You know what I'm saying? Anytime you out there, you just massaging the nostrils of a fucking senior citizen raccoon to get it just right because you're a taxidermist, yeah, man, that ain't even proper, and you know it. But Aquanet was the original. If you wanted to do taxidermy and you couldn't, or if you were like, say you had you would just hit an animal with that net, hit him with that hairspray, and that thing was stuck like that. You could catch a bass and just spray it down with that Aquanet, put it on the wall, bajam. And now you have that beautiful, you have that piece that people can see and be like, oh, he's got abilities. He's got, fisherman capabilities like that. But now if you don't have an Aquanet, also say if you were at the house and, they had a lady in our neighborhood, Miss Grutch, and Miss Grutch had she actually had a panther that killed her cousin, right? And but that's because he was trying to throw a surprise party and employment, right? You could be in a house, you get evicted. Next thing you know, you can maybe get a mobile home. If you could take your house with you now, you could get a halfway house. You get half of a house. You could get an apartment. You could get a fourplex. Like you could get a tent in LA. There's 4 dudes living in just on the street, like literally 30 feet from my apartment. There's 4 tents in the park behind my apartment complex. There's probably, I bet there's 100 tents in there. People living in there in tents. It's like you could just keep kind of going through the system. Like you can, like I feel like a long time ago it would be like. And I guess the tents, that's like actually being homeless, but it's like we've kind of built this society where it's you have to make your own motivation, because it used to seem like back in the day, like in the Great Depression or, Benedict Arnold or something like that, or, if there was like a big flood or anything, like you might die. You might die. So there was this thing inside of your head that, this fight or flight kind of thing that like got you up every morning. You had to, you had to survive. Like the survival instinct was alive inside of us. And because it needed to be there. It was like a pilot light, like on your heater downstairs, on your water heater. That pilot light to survive was in us. But now in America anyway, it feels like survival it's kind of we've become grandfathered into it. It's almost guaranteed. And I know I'm not saying that there's not addiction and things like that can really take people off their course. But outside of addiction and mental illness, you'll always be taken care of kind of in America. So I wonder if that's starting to like kill our survival instinct that's inside of us. And I think about that, like, because I start thinking, one thing I always loved was I've always loved in my life was just feeling like the underdog, just that survivor instinct, that thing like, that dirty little M&M that Marshall Mathers that lived in the base of your brain, that thing that got you like, I got this. I can take care of me. I will survive. Because you had to, I felt like a little bit more when I was growing up. But now it's gotten a little more like, oh, everybody's going to survive. The government, everyone will be taken care of. There will be a stipend. Everybody will. And I'm not saying that that's wrong, but I'm saying that that's killed that survival instinct and that pilot light inside of us that like, I feel like that's killed it. So now you got to find your own motivation. You got to find, and that's why I think there's so many things out there that like motivation is such a big thing now, because we got to find our own motivation. We got to find it, because that pilot light that was in our brain, that was our motivation. That thing, it doesn't want to burn bright if it knows that everything's going to be okay. Fight or flight, or just, catch this check off the govy and fucking, post up at the Days Inn for a month. I'm out here eating, being a freaking bad boy out here at the Hampton Inn. Out here, buying crushed leather off the internet, buying fake crushed leather. But anyway, she gave us this plastic bowl and we put it out in the yard, me and her son was real leaky in the jowls. He was real, I don't know if his bottom lip really did its job, because he had just saliva coming out, that little geyser, he's that little local geyser. Like if you wanted to mail a bunch of letters, you go by him and just rub a stamp on his cheek and just put it right on the thing. He was that little fucking walking lick. And so we get out there and we'd try to catch these leaves in our mouth and put them into the bowl. We do our hands behind our back or tie them behind our back with some rope or something. And then we get the leaves and put them into the bowl. And he was all, he had that drippy, his mouth, his whole face was all slick. And he would drool upwards. This dude could fucking drool. He would drool upwards. The drool would go up, down, and up. Like gravity didn't even work right by his face. And he would drool down and up, and his whole face would be wet. And I'd have to catch the leaves in my mouth. It would be autumn time when the leaves were coming off the trees, and I'd have to catch them in my mouth naturally. Because I only just had moisture inside of my mouth. And I had a little bit of oily skin, but because we grew up, we were literally right by I guess one of those places where they would paint cars, or maybe they were just stealing cars and painting them to get rid of them. But some of the oil-based paints and stuff they were using over there, that oil would get in the air when they were using those guns, and it would get, it would stay on us for a couple of months if they were really doing a big paint job over there. But anyhow, the boy, my neighbor, he'd have drooled all up, and his whole face would be all shiny, look like he'd been in a fire and they put salve on him. But that was just his natural, gut moisture, that saliva, drool. And he could catch all the leaves, dude. He'd run around and get all the leaves. The leaf would hit him, and it would just stick on his face, just, So he'd have about 40 fucking leaves, dude. And I'd have to catch one at a time in my mouth. So he was always cheating a little bit, because I had to get one at a time. But he'd have like 40 or 50. And then one time he scared this dog, man. They had a Rottweiler that lived by us, who allegedly, and I'm not saying this is true, but killed one of my favorite cafeteria workers once. And this Rottweiler when we would do stuff outdoors, he would get nervous because he didn't have a leash or a chain or anything. He just lived in the neighborhood. I don't even know where he lived at. I bet he had a nice fucking house, dude. This motherfucker looked like he had 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and a couple little kids. Dude, I wouldn't be surprised if this Rottweiler had human children, because he was that, he had shoulders on him. He had a fucking, it looked like he listened to NWA, Yonkers with attitude, and did all of that wildness. But he one time came when when this boy got all the moisture on his face all over and hit so many leaves, it scared that dog, and that dog fucking came and bit him right in the back.
About things you like to do in it when you were a kid.
Oh, Pablo, thanks for calling, man. From Hawaii. It's another Hawaii call. I had no idea. Onward.
Well, it made me remember my childhood. I grew up in on the south side of the hemisphere.
Damn, dog. A fucking space baby, huh? Dang, you sound like maybe Elon Musk's little stepchild. South side of the hemisphere of what?
In Recife, in Brazil. And when we were growing up, what we used to do a whole lot, we used to be into like shit like fighting fish.
Fighting fish? How, bruh? Onward?
You know, oh man, I remember I used to have a fighting fish, a badass fucking fighting fish, man. We heard about this guy, this old man that used to have all these fucking fighting fish.
Like a fighting fish? Like what? Like James J. Barracuda, dude? Like what? Onward?
And he used to be supposed to be a legend in the town when it comes to fighting fish. And anyways, we went looking for that guy, and turned out that we walked for
Damn, we got beef in these fish streets.
like about an hour and a half, and I had no idea where I was. Anyways, I was about 7 years old, but we found the guy, and man, just picture the guy, fucking super like dark skin, big ass nose, and big ass spores all over his face. Fucking, I remember to this day, man, rings on each finger. His house had no door, no electricity, but he had all these fighting fish on shelves all over the house.
Jesus, man. So this guy just had a house full of fighting fish, bro, and you guys went over there? What is going on?
And anyways, I brought my fish over there to fight the guy.
Fuck, bro. Dang, dude. This thing is like, damn, bro. It's like Finding Nemo meets Rocky, man. This shit is getting intense. Let's hear more.
And I remember my friend bet some amount of money with a guy that my fish would be his fish. And anyway, we won. And the guy fucking made us run with a fucking big ass machete the size of his arm. So yeah, we went running. Fucking lost whatever amount of money my friend bet on my fish, and fucking left my fish over there too.
Damn, bruh. Dude, yeah, that's woo. You caught up in them flyweight fish streets, man. Dang, dude. That's intense, bruh. That's that, you out there in them, in them UFC unagi streets, in them maki. You out there, you got a tuna and a carp going toe to toe, bruh. You out there fighting fish, dude, in Hawaii? You said you brought your fish over to his house? I just picture like some kid just carrying his fucking fish in a bowl over there. Yeah, I'm here. I heard your seahorse has been talking shit. Wow, that's crazy, man. I didn't know it's real out there in Hawaii, bruh. You guys out there fucking just going toe to toe. That's that mackerel. That, you out there smacking mackerel against each other. Dang, man. But look, just stay straight, stay safe out there.